Hi guys, welcome to this upload for you guys here on Wrestling Fan Open Mic Night. It's night time somewhere in this world that may be. Last time I checked, I'm at 53 subscribers. You're growing gradually, guys. I can't thank you enough for you guys. Keep supporting every time when I do any uploads right here on this very channel. Now, today I want to actually say that there's a few things that I actually want to talk about. Now, it's quite women's wrestling orientated. I can never pronounce that word. I do apologise, but orientated. I know oriented, ainted, however you fucking say it. But end of the day, right? I'm on my own today. No guests, just me talking about women's wrestling and wrestling in general. To be honest, I want to actually point out to every one of you guys out there, right? I saw the comments that Gail Kim said about Ryo, and I feel like that was harsh. Way too harsh. I know she's been around a while in the wrestling business, but the problem is when you take it to social media, you literally get ridiculed for whatever you do. You know, and I feel hard done by on Ryo's behalf. Yes, I don't know her personally, but I feel like those criticizers and comments shouldn't have been on social media on blast, because all the fucking tribalism that's in this world there is, we don't need any more hindrance towards any professional wrestling, you know. I don't know if she's working with WWE or not working with WWE. I do not know Gail Kim, because I've lost track what Gail Kim's up to. I do respect the woman. I've met the woman. I praised her for everything she's done for TNA. She did amazing work for TNA, don't get me wrong. And then she comes out with this. I feel like when you look at this in the bigger picture, that I thought, okay, if TNA don't want her around, it was a massive loss for what she's actually done for the women's division, working for that company inside and out. And then I thought, okay, one day I hope she comes to AEW to tighten up that women's division even more. You know, I don't mean like wrestle wise, I mean like give them guidance, give them stability, give them even more, even though they are fine tuned, don't get me wrong. They are fine tuned, but there's a few little niggling bits that I thought, okay, one day she'll come into the company and then do what she has to do with the company, and lo and behold, it hasn't panned out that way. And for her to put her on blast and say about Ryo, I'm not being funny, how young she is. I think the weird thing about it is people don't realise that people can take these to heart and damage their self-esteem, you know, because at the end of the day, I'll admit it to you. When I was doing this wrestling talk show on Gallo Knots that I've been brought up since 2010, I mentioned briefly how much hard work it was to get that for the first 5 years. Another reason why I gave up was all the troll comments and the not tribalism, it was troll comments, personal attacks and so on. You know, nothing like critiquing my product, what I put out for you guys. It's just it hurts. Even literally, it hurts to the point. Yeah, she's been in the business for it. Just say X amount of years, right? But you put her out on blast like that. You know, that's harsh. You know, at least have a one-to-one with her on the phone call. You know, people are trying to get into wrestling still. You know, it's a revolving door when it comes to wrestling. There's different generations. You know, I think I'm Generation X compared to what today is. Millenniums. I don't know what the class am as. But I want to say to every one of you guys is it was uncalled for. You know, show some support at least. But there were brutal comments. You know, I'm not going to go through them because there's no fucking point. You know, because you probably heard them countless times. But I just wanted to add my piece to it. That she literally had no right to say what she had to say on blast. on social media. It's I find that quite embarrassing. For the girl. You just mentioned you woke up 1 minute and you literally look at your phone and then you get a notification saying by numerous of your friends saying, "Oh, can't believe Gail Kim sort of like said this about you," or she noticed it herself when she looked on her phone. It's heart wrenching, you know. End of the day, women's wrestling has had that stickler for many years that it's been a piss break. I've supported it for many, many years. As you can fucking tell. As you can tell. Pro Wrestling Eve is an example, I've supported women's wrestling for God knows how long, It's bad enough when you're a wrestling fan, you want to watch everything, I'm one of these neutral fans. I faded away from WWE for good damn reason, as you know full well. I lost the taste for it, but I do respect the wrestlers that work in that company have to do what they have to do. And that's just me being honest with you. I've always been honest with you guys. So, when you look at the bigger spectrum of it, that for her to do what she did shouldn't have been done. It frustrates me seeing stuff this happen, that people rely so much on social media to get their voice across. You're here right now. That's what I rely on. Yeah, I've got TNS Attitude. Yeah, I've got Wrestling Nerds Paddy. But I mean, when I want to talk to other people, I've got you guys. Yeah, I've got AJWF as well. I've got Facebook by messages, like loads of people. I mean, like an outlet. That's why I started YouTube in the first place back in the day, and I still look to this as my old nostalgia. But it's so disheartening, seeing that. Maybe just one person that she's blasted. Yeah, don't get me wrong, but it does affect the whole of the wrestling community, some way or form, in a whole. You get some people that agreeing with her, which is kind of annoying. But they'll agree to disagree, as the old saying goes. On a lighter note, AEW debuted the women's tag team titles last night. Yes, they're the same design as the males, but they're going to serve a purpose. They're not going to be just a item of clothing, you might want to say. They're going to solidify what they set out to do as being tag team champions, whoever wins them. We do not know how it's going to be happening, but I'm finding it very interesting because I've wanted this a year and a half now. A year and a half for a women's tag team belts for a while. As soon as they started getting women's factions together, getting from, how to put it, getting the women's division perfectly, getting the women's tag team division, you might want to say, because there's numerous of women that have been technically in a tag team already for many, many months. I've wanted this for a while, and we're finally getting it. Are we going to have it in the tournament form? I would have had this in a tournament a few weeks ago, and then crown the winners at the 6th anniversary of Dynamite, because that's a landmark for it. The benchmark would have been alright next week, and that's just me being honest. It may be double or nothing, I don't know, because at the end of the day, yes, we're coming into October very, very soon. But I would have personally done it that way. But the way they've been teasing tag teams with the women, and the thing is, what AEW get right is the triple threat, fatal four-way matches, they get them perfectly done. Women's tag team matches are great. They're coming on leaps and bounds from when they first started. the thing is, with the tag team titles in AEW, they're so wide open because they've got working relationships with other organisations. I would love them to end up working with the likes of WoW, as well as Pro Wrestling Eve, properly here in the United Kingdom, to showboat the accolade what they've actually got. You know, me personally, when I look at like a Mercedes Moné, she's got all those belts. Yes, she's made women's wrestling noticed. Tony Storm made women's wrestling noticed. I nearly cried when Chris Statlander actually won the women's title because I was just in naturally shock. That was pulled the trigger for Chris at long last. You know, she's had numerous of attempts at it, but never got there. But then she got there. You know, and that's what it means to me when I see stuff like this. They've actually, the women's division in AEW, let alone the guest appearances from other companies. We'll say guest appearances because at the end of the day, it is women's wrestling. They've got the likes of Stardom, CMLL. They've got even Rev Pro here in the United Kingdom. You know, there's so many women's tag teams available to put on AEW. You know, and that's great. That's what I love. You know, when I was watching last night's show, yes, the first match didn't appeal to me, but the rest literally worked in a lot of favours. Because even though if it was a call off pay-per-view from the pay-per-view, of All Out that happened this past Saturday, they've done it perfectly. Because they were mainly aiming the women to be focused on. Other than, yes, fair enough, you had a male-dominated card, but you had the likes of Willow Nightingale coming out, shooting a promo towards FTR. You had the likes of Chris Statlander and Holly Cameron with the recruiting that Death Riders wants. The likes of Death Riders want, lo and behold, Chris Statlander to join them. I'm thinking, no, I think they want Harley Cameron because the way it seemed, it's sort of been teasing towards week by week with Willa Yuta, John Moxley, Mara Sharapova, if that's how you pronounce her name. First time I'm attempting to say her name. Because I know I normally butcher it if I try. You know, I think there's a tennis player I was just talking about. I digress. You had sort of the Death Riders mamers, Claudio Castagnoli, you had Pac. I can't wait to see Gabe Kidd come back. You know, former tag team with Pac. That'll be an interesting concept. But, yeah, you had all those aiming towards Chris Statlander. Then you had Wheeler Uter. Sorry, I'm just an East Midlands lad from Nottingham. Well, not a lad anymore. I'm an OAP. I'm 43. But you literally had that. And then she said, no, fuck you, sort of thing. Clotheslined him, ran off. But look at Harley Cameron. Watch that episode, that part again. Look at the way Harley Cameron's face was. You know, she didn't look like scared. She looked like she had adrenaline. You know, we're used to having women full fronting. Not that sort of way before you get it the wrong way. Being larger than life character, then all of a sudden they turn dark. You know, we had it actually. I could be wrong, but I'm just saying this. Anna Jay, when she joined the Dark Order, no one expected it. You had the likes of Julia Hart join the House of Black when we had Malachi Black, Aleister Black now gone back to WWE, Buddy Murphy. But the thing is with Buddy Murphy, obviously he's out injured. But that's what I mean. At least one thing that Judy Hart has continued on the character, not gone back to the cheerleading roots that she first started in the company. You know, it's interesting, guys, at the moment for women's wrestling. Jelly strawberries, if you're wondering what that was. You know, it's just an eye opener that you've got these plethora of women. You know, and the 6th anniversary next week. You know, with the storyline at the moment with the likes of Adam Copeland, Edge, right? Backstage segment with Christian Gage. You literally have that backstage segment that he's leaving the company. Now, obviously, we know that storyline. You know, MJF yet again, Maxwell, Jacob Freeman, whatever you want to class him as, sorry. Him literally cutting a promo saying he's left the company, sort of thing, until he comes back. You know, Dynamite was a solid show last night, and I'm not bullshitting you. It was a solid show. But by God, it's interesting at the moment. I don't get a chance to watch Collision, but I might watch Collision and see what goes off. It depends how I feel on Saturday. Then we look at the bigger spectrum of things going forward with AEW. I'm really interested how they're going to do this with the tag team division, because the women's that they've got in tag teams and factions, unbelievable, unfucking believable. That's just my thoughts and opinions. Tell me your thoughts down below. Until next time, catch you guys soon.